In criminal history, few tales capture the imagination quite like the story of Richard Lee McNair. Known as the man who ingeniously broke out of jail by mailing himself out in a box, McNair's escapades have become legendary. His story is one of audacious escapes, meticulous planning, and extraordinary cunning. His most famous escape, where he mailed himself out of prison, stands out as one of the most ingenious prison breaks in modern history. Richard Lee McNair was born on December 19, 1958, in Altus, Oklahoma. He was the son of a reserve police officer. By all accounts, he was intelligent and resourceful, with his brother describing him as the smartest person I've ever met. His early life was marked by a series of misdemeanors that eventually escalated into more serious crimes. McNair joined the United States Air Force, where he served with some distinction. Yet, despite his respectable career, McNair developed a penchant for criminal activities, primarily motivated by financial gain. McNair's criminal career began with a series of burglaries, but his life of crime escalated dramatically on November 17, 1978. On that fateful night, McNair and his accomplices broke into a grain elevator operated by the Farmers Union Elevator Company in Minot, North Dakota, intending to rob the premises. He committed a botched burglary that resulted in the murder of one man and the shooting of another. However, he was surprised by two men, truck driver Jerome Thies and another individual. In the ensuing confrontation, McNair shot and killed Thies and also shot the second man, who managed to survive the attack. Following the murders, the police quickly apprehended McNair, and he was charged with the crimes. During the interrogation, McNair surrendered a concealed handgun, and it didn't take long for him to be sentenced to 2 life sentences for murder and attempted murder, as well as an additional 30-year sentence for burglary. Just a few months after his initial arrest in February 1998, McNair managed to escape from the Minot police station, where he was being held. While handcuffed to a chair and being questioned by 3 detectives, McNair used a tube of lip balm in his pocket to grease his hands and slip out of the handcuffs. He then squeezed through a ventilation duct and evaded capture for 9 months before being apprehended. This escape showcased McNair's ingenuity and determination, traits that would serve him well in his subsequent breakouts. The escape resulted in a foot chase, with Richard Lee McNair leading the cops around town. He ran into a building where the cops pursued him up a few flights of stairs to the building's 3rd floor. Once surrounded, he jumped. McNair landed on the ground and injured his back, making it much easier for the cops to detain him. But that was just a warm-up for his next escape. Richard Lee McNair's second escape attempt occurred in October 1992 from the North Dakota State Penitentiary. He managed to crawl out of the prison through a ventilation duct with 2 other inmates. He remained at large for nearly 9 months before being recaptured in July 1993 in Grand Island, Nebraska. However, it was McNair's third and final escape in 2006 that truly cemented his reputation as one of the most cunning and elusive fugitives in American history. On April 5, 2006, McNair escaped from the United States Penitentiary in Pollock, Louisiana, where he was serving his sentences. The escape was nothing short of brilliant. Here, he devised an escape plan that would cement his place in the annals of criminal history. His plan was meticulously executed. Leveraging his position working in the prison's Unicor program, a prison industry that manufactures products for government use, McNair devised a scheme to mail himself out of the prison. McNair had been working in the prison's mailroom, a position that allowed him access to various materials and, more importantly, an opportunity to observe the facility's operations. Over several months, McNair put together a makeshift escape pod using mail bags and other materials he found in the mailroom. This pod would let him hide inside a pallet of used postal mail bags, complete with a breathing tube and other provisions to keep him going during the journey. It was pretty basic, but it worked well enough to keep him hidden. On April 5, 2006, he climbed into his creation and had it placed on a pallet with other mail bags. The pallet was then shrink-wrapped and loaded onto a truck to be shipped out of the prison. He timed everything perfectly, making sure he got into the mailbag when there was minimal supervision. Timing was key for McNair's escape. He knew the prison wouldn't realize he was missing until 4 p.m., giving him a good few hours head start. The package was loaded onto a truck and taken to a nearby warehouse. Once inside the warehouse, he waited for the staff to step out for lunch. When they did, McNair used a homemade tool to cut through the packaging and made his way to freedom. His pallet left the prison around 9:45 a.m., and he was out of it by around 11 a.m. His plan was to head to the nearby town of Alexandria, Louisiana, where he'd steal supplies and transportation to aid his escape. What makes this escape even more impressive is that McNair managed to slip through despite all the security measures in place. He took advantage of the prison's routine and the guards' complacency, showing he could think several steps ahead. One of the craziest moments during this time on the run happened in Ball, Louisiana. Just hours after escaping from Pollock, McNair was stopped while running on a railroad track near Ball by police officer Carl Bordelon. This incident was caught on the video camera in Bordelon's patrol car. McNair had no ID and gave Officer Bordelon the alias Robert Jones. When asked again 5 minutes later, he gave a different alias, Jimmy Jones, but the officer didn't catch the change. McNair laughed and joked with the officer, and even when the officer got a matching description of the inmate, McNair stayed calm and collected. He managed to convince Bordelon that he was just jogging and was in town to help with a post-Katrina roofing project, allowing him to get back to jogging within 10 minutes. One thing that made it easier for McNair to avoid getting caught was that the photo given to the police was super low quality and already 6 months old. Plus, the prison told the cops they weren't completely sure McNair had actually escaped. Bordelon, the officer who stopped him, said he let McNair go because the description the police had was way off from how McNair looked. During the 10 minutes Bordelon questioned him, McNair stayed calm and gave totally believable explanations, eventually convincing Bordelon his story was legit. This encounter could have ended McNair's run, instead became a legendary moment in his escape story. The video of McNair convincing Bordelon of his fake identity became a symbol of his audacity and cleverness. McNair's ability to dodge capture was truly something else. After his escape, he went on a cross-country journey using disguises, fake identities, and a lot of luck to stay ahead of law enforcement for 18 months. He traveled all over the US and Canada, often hitchhiking and relying on the kindness of strangers to keep hidden. He even sent a Christmas card to the warden of the prison he escaped from, Tim Schutzel, who admitted McNair was smart and resourceful. On April 13, 2006, U.S. Marshals added McNair to their 15 most wanted list. Noted he was the first prisoner to escape from a federal prison since 1991. Later that April, about 2 weeks after his escape, McNair managed to cross into British Columbia from Blaine, Washington. On April 28, 2006, the RCMP in Penticton, BC, confronted McNair while investigating a stolen car he was driving, which was parked at a local beach. The officers asked him to step out of the car for questioning. And he did, but then he took off running across a nearby field and soon outran the officers. They impounded the car but didn't realize it was McNair until 2 days later, when one of the officers recognized him from an episode of America's Most Wanted. They found a digital camera full of selfies, which they figured were for making fake IDs. When they checked the car, they found McNair's fingerprints, confirming he was in Canada. After escaping arrest in Penticton, McNair rode a bike to Kelowna. Since it took the police several days to confirm his identity, it was pretty easy for McNair to slip away from the area. In May 2006, he made his way back to the United States by driving a Subaru Outback from Vernon, British Columbia to Blaine, Washington. McNair then traveled across the US and eventually crossed back into Canada from Minnesota. Once back in Canada, he journeyed through southern Ontario and then headed west to Vancouver. In 2007, McNair took a trip to eastern Canada. He drove through the Laurentian Highlands in Quebec, where he enjoyed some mountain biking and spent a lot of time around Lac Saint-Jean. He almost tried crossing back into the US at Derby Line, Vermont, but the high security on the American side made him think it was too risky. He eventually traveled through Halifax, Nova Scotia, and St. John, New Brunswick. McNair spent about 2 months in Fredericton, New Brunswick before he ran into the police again. While on the run, McNair owned several laptops. After having one of his laptops seized in Penticton, he started storing most of his info on USB sticks. Using a scanner, digital camera, Photoshop, and Pet ID website, McNair managed to make a pretty decent fake Alaska driver's license. He figured out how to rig his video camera to his laptop so he could cut his hair. One of McNair's laptops was dedicated solely to monitoring a Louisiana-based website that kept track of all media coverage about him. To support himself, McNair stole vehicles and cash from car dealerships. Having once worked as a car salesman himself, he knew exactly where to find cash and keys and how to avoid security. He only stole new vehicles since their window stickers would indicate if they had GPS-style tracking systems. McNair made sure to avoid driving conspicuous-looking vehicles, preferring white ones that everybody has. In one incident, while McNair was staying in a motel near Chilliwack, British Columbia, he left to buy something and came back to find the place surrounded by a police SWAT team. He started to flee in his car, but then heard on a local AM radio station that the police were responding to a hostage situation at the motel. McNair actually returned to the scene and filmed the standoff with a Sony HD video camera he had just bought. However, McNair's luck eventually ran out. On October 24, 2007, near Nash Creek, New Brunswick, off-duty RCMP Constable Dan Melanson noticed a fancy-looking white cube van with crappy-looking tinted rear windows and an Ontario license plate. Thinking the van might be stolen or used for smuggling booze or cigarettes, Melanson took note of the plate number and saw that the van was headed to Campbellton, a nearby city. He didn't try to stop McNair himself, but his report alerted other RCMP officers in Campbellton about the van. The next day, rookie constable Stéphane Gagnon, who had only been on the job for 6 weeks, spotted McNair's van by chance in downtown Campbellton and decided to follow it. After a slow-speed car chase and a foot chase, Gagnon, with the help from his field coach, Constable Nelson Levesque, managed to arrest McNair. McNair later said his capture was just bad luck, calling it just one of those days. He was transferred to the Atlantic Institution, a Canadian federal maximum security penitentiary in Renault, New Brunswick, while waiting to be extradited to the U.S. Given the high-profile nature of his escape and the embarrassment it caused the authorities, McNair was placed in the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility in Florence, Colorado, often referred to as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. This place is known for housing some of the most dangerous and notorious criminals in the federal system. Today, Richard Lee McNair is serving his sentence at the Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado, which houses some of the most notorious criminals in the United States, including the Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, and the shoe bomber Richard Reed. It's considered the most secure prison in the country, and McNair has definitely earned his place there. McNair's story has captured the public's imagination with a TV series titled The Prison Break, dramatizing his extraordinary escapes. His ability to outwit law enforcement and evade capture for so long has made him a legendary figure in the history of American crime. However, it's important to remember that his crimes, including the murder of Jerry Thies, were serious and had a profound impact on the lives of his victims and their families. McNair's escapes significantly impacted prison security and procedures, prompting prisons across the United States to reassess their security measures and protocols, particularly in the use of mailrooms. This led to stricter controls and monitoring of inmate activities. These incidents highlighted the necessity for enhanced training for staff to recognize potential escape plans and maintain constant vigilance to prevent such occurrences, serving as a stark reminder of the lengths inmates would go to regain their freedom. Richard Lee McNair's tale is one of audacity, intelligence, and the unrelenting pursuit of freedom. His escapes, particularly the one involving his ingenious use of a mailbag, have cemented his place in the annals of criminal history. Through careful planning, quick thinking, and an ability to manipulate those around him, McNair achieved what many would consider impossible. While McNair is now securely incarcerated, his story continues to be a subject of fascination for criminologists, psychologists, and the general public. His ability to outsmart the system and evade capture for extended periods serves as a reminder of the challenges faced by law enforcement and the ongoing need to adapt and improve security measures. Richard Lee McNair, the man who broke out of jail in a box, will forever be remembered as one of the most cunning escape artists of our time. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to Breakout Bank for more videos.